Discover the 10 incredible lives changed forever after 9/11. Heartwarming stories you forgot. Samir stood behind the counter of his small convenience store, the glow from the overhead lights shining on his warm smile. His eyes sparkled with kindness, and his heart swelled with hope as he served the community that had embraced him when he first arrived. Before 9/11, his store was more than just a place to grab a loaf of bread. It was a gathering space for laughter, stories, and the beautiful mosaic of cultures that made up his New Jersey neighborhood. He had become a part of their lives, offering groceries, sharing a comforting word, or advising local kids when they needed guidance. But then everything changed. The world crumbled, leaving a heavy shadow over his once vibrant surroundings. After the tragic events of that fateful day, fear crept into the hearts of his neighbors, and suspicion became a constant companion. Samir's once inviting store felt a chill as community members who once frequented it hesitated, casting nervous glances through the door as if he were now a stranger. The laughter had faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that surrounded him like a tight grip, squeezing the spirit out of his shop. Days turned into weeks, and the neighborhood began to feel fractured. It was painful for Samir to witness a brutal shift that clashed with the American dream he'd held dear. Doubts plagued him, whispering that perhaps he was the outsider, unworthy of the acceptance he'd fought so hard to earn. The facade of warmth began to crack, and on a particularly difficult day, an act of vandalism shattered what little hope remained. He stood amidst the broken bottles and defaced walls of his store, heart heavy and eyes stinging. How could this happen to a place meant for community? Was kindness really so easily forgotten? Just then, flyers filled with information about an upcoming food drive waved from a nearby park bench. A gathering meant to support those struggling in the wake of change. But rumors whispered of sabotage. Samir's heart raced, anger rising in the pit of his stomach. He felt alienated not just by the community but by the identity he had embraced when he first landed in America. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Amidst the turmoil, Samir found a spark of hope in a community meeting. Clara, the local schoolteacher, stood before them, her voice quivering with raw emotion as she spoke about the importance of unity. She shared her losses, her struggles, but with each word, she built a bridge for others to cross. Her message resonated deeply, igniting a fire within him. He realized he needed to fight not just for his store, but for the community he'd cherished. He gathered his courage and proposed restarting the food drive, turning it into a celebration of their shared humanity. But just when it seemed hope was rising, his store was vandalized again, leaving him heartbroken. Cleaning up the glass, tears mingling with frustration, Samir was caught in an emotional cyclone. Could one man's effort truly heal the rift? As he looked at the shattered glass and the empty streets, he felt the impending weight of despair. Could love and resilience find a way to mend the broken pieces? Samir found himself awake that night, his heart racing and his mind swirling with doubt. The room was quiet, save for the distant hum of nighttime traffic outside. Outside those walls, darkness fell heavy, as if the world had been drained of color. He pulled on an old sweater, seeking comfort in its familiar fabric. He stepped into the store, feeling the worn linoleum beneath his feet. The flickering overhead lights cast odd shadows, and every step echoed loudly in the stillness. The store was a shell of its former self, yet it still held memories of laughter and community. He could recall moments, children skipping in for candy, neighbors sharing a coffee, and the sound of friendly banter that once filled the air. Determined to reignite that energy, Samir set to work. He swept the floor, cleaned the windows, and rearranged the shelves until everything sparkled once more. He wanted to create a space that invited people back not just to shop but to share. He posted bright flyers around town, promoting the food drive as a community block party, festooning the walls with promises of music, laughter, and unity. Word began to spread, and for the first time in months, he felt an exhilarating tingle of hope. Neighbors began to stop by. Some cautiously, some with renewed curiosity. A pair of old friends he hadn't seen in ages, Maria and John, walked in. Their eyes widened and faces thawed when they recognized him. "Samir. We've missed you," Maria exclaimed, her voice filled with warmth. Samir's heart swelled. It felt like a small triumph. They began chatting, reminiscing about old times, and for that moment, the chill in the air faded. As days passed, he found himself looking forward to conversations. A local lawyer shared news about city developments, a college student asked for advice on snacks for their study group, and a single mother opened up about her struggles, seeking a little compassion. With each visitor, pieces of his spirit stitched back together. The day of the food drive arrived and the air buzzed with excitement. Bright decorations adorned the park, and a small stage was set for local performances. Samir's heart raced with anticipation as people began to gather. The aroma of food filled the air, sizzling on grills and mingling with laughter. Clara was there, microphone in hand, rallying the crowd with inspiring words. But just as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first notes of music began to float in the evening air, a small group arrived, their faces twisted with skepticism. Samir's pulse quickened as they eyed the event with disdain. Another wave of old fears washed over him. What if this was another moment of rejection? Samir took a few steadying breaths. He could feel the warmth of those who had come to support him behind him, a sea of hopeful faces that had come together to stand strong. He gathered his courage, stepped forward, and invited the group to join them. "Let us share this moment together," he called out, voice firm yet inviting. The energy in the air shifted as eyes darted from him to the crowd around them. Would they accept his invitation? Could this moment become something larger than fear? Samir's heart hung in the balance as the group exchanged glances. Everything felt suspended in time. Would they step forward or retreat back into the shadows? Quiet settled over the gathering, and time seemed to stretch out as Samir watched the group hesitate. He held his breath, feeling every heartbeat echo through the quiet park. Each face around him showed a blend of curiosity and concern, waiting to see what would unfold. Then something shifted. A young woman in the group stepped forward, her eyes searching. "What do you want from us?" she asked, her voice slightly shaky but challenging. Samir appreciated the directness. It spoke of courage, albeit veiled in doubt. "We want to share love," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "We want to create a space where we can all come together, regardless of our past or who we are. Tonight is about unity. Let us celebrate that." The moment lingered like a cloud hovering low, then an older man beside the woman shook his head. "You think it's that simple? We're not just going to forget our differences." At that, Samir felt a sharp pang in his chest. He wanted to argue, to refute him. But instead, he stepped back, planting his feet on the ground. "I don't expect anyone to forget anything. But I believe we can make room for each other under one roof, at least for tonight. Sharing food, laughter, it's a start, isn't it?" A murmuring cascaded through the crowd. Faces turned to one another, considering the challenge Samir had laid before them. A baby cried somewhere nearby, a reminder of innocence, of potential, and for a moment, it seemed to cut through the tension. Slowly, the young woman who first questioned him nodded. "Fine. Let us see what you've got." Her challenge hung in the air like an olive branch, a fragile thread connecting the two groups. As if in response, Clara, sensing a shift, raised her microphone once more. "All right, everyone. Who's ready for some music?" A wave of excitement rippled through the gathered attendees, and Samir felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Then, laughter broke out as children raced to the front. In that instant, the door to connection swung open wider. The group on the edge seemed to relax a bit, curiosity sparking their interest. I brought my guitar. A voice called from the crowd, and all eyes turned to a young man who stepped up to the stage. With a nod from Clara, he strummed a few chords and sang out a familiar tune. The notes spilled over the gathering, lightening the mood. Samir watched as first the skeptical group and then everyone around began to sway, the rhythm offering a gentle bridge between hearts that had been apart for too long. A few of the skeptical group began to smile, the tension melting away under layers of shared experience. As people began to mingle, he felt the warmth of connection spilling over the barriers in their minds. It was just music, but it spoke volumes. He stepped back, letting the moment swell, allowing himself to savor the joy born from unity, but then, just as laughter broke out again, a voice shouted over the music. "What are you trying to prove, Samir?" The challenge cut through the revelry. Samir turned sharply, finding not skepticism this time, but something deeper, fear mixed with frail hope. His heart raced. What was he trying to prove, really? Was this just a simple food drive, or was he testing the limits of community? The music faltered for a moment, and everyone turned to listen. Samir recognized he stood at a crossroads, a pivotal moment that could either pull them together or split them apart. Maybe this is more than just tonight, he realized. Maybe this is the beginning of something bigger, but before he could answer the question that weighed heavy in the air, he caught sight of someone in the crowd. An unfamiliar face, staring intently. And the uncertainty that loomed next felt ominous. What had he uncovered beneath the surface? He inhaled deeply, feeling the gravity of the question settle in the pit of his stomach. Would this gathering change anything, or would it fracture the community further? Samir felt the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. The unfamiliar face watching him had an intensity that made his skin prickle. He couldn't shake the feeling that this person held a piece of the puzzle. The crowd had quieted almost instinctively, anticipation hanging thick in the air. "Who are you?" Samir found himself asking, his voice steadying with purpose. Slowly, the stranger stepped forward, revealing a woman in her 30s with dark hair pulled back into a tight braid. Her expression was a complex mix of resolve and doubt, betraying emotions simmering just beneath the surface. "My name is Zara," she said, her voice raw and laced with urgency. "I came here tonight because I wanted to see if any of this was real. If people like us can still come together." "People like us?" Came a sharp response from the older man, who had challenged Samir earlier. "What do you mean by that?" Zara didn't flinch. "You know what I mean. People marked by our pasts, by what we've seen and lost. The scars we carry don't just fade away." A heavy silence fell over the crowd. Samir took a step closer to Zara. "I understand. We all carry something. But tonight isn't about erasing those scars. It's about sharing them, together, making something beautiful from the broken pieces." Someone from the crowd called out, "But how do we trust each other?" That question echoed, reverberating deep within Samir. "Trust is built one moment at a time," he replied. "It's showing up, being vulnerable, and letting each other in, even just a little." Zara's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, the tension in the air shifted. "And if it doesn't work?" she asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Then we try again," Samir replied, feeling a swell of hope. "We can fall and rise again, together. But we can't give up without even trying." Clara, sensing the weighty atmosphere, stepped back up to the microphone. "All right, everyone, let us take a moment," she said gently. "Let us breathe. Look around. We're all here for a reason." As she paused, the crowd took a collective breath, the atmosphere charged with a new energy. Just then, laughter erupted again, breaking the intensity of the moment. Children were making faces at the adults, their innocence bubbling joy into the gathering. A young boy tugged at Samir's shirt and pointed to the stage. "Can we sing again?" That innocent request brought smiles and lightness. Samir's heart warmed, realizing it was these very moments that mattered. Life wasn't just a collection of serious decisions, it was also woven with laughter and light, even when it felt heavy. Zara caught Samir's eye then. "Okay, let us see if this can actually be something," she said, her earlier doubt giving way to cautious hope. Samir grinned, energized by the shift. The girl at the microphone scanned the crowd. More music? She was met with shouts of agreement. "Let us celebrate what we can build together," shouted a voice from the back, reigniting the spirit of unity. As the music started, Samir glanced again at Zara, and for the first time, he saw a glimmer of trust in her eyes. He waved her to join him, and together they danced to the melody. In that moment, as they swayed under the fading light, he felt the fabric of their community start to stitch itself back together, but then, just as the music crescendoed, a figure appeared at the edge of the crowd, silhouetted against the fading sun. Something about this newcomer felt unsettling, a shadow cutting through the warmth of the moment. Samir's pulse quickened again, and uncertainty crept back in. What secrets did this new person carry, and how would it affect the fragile connection they had begun to forge? Would they embrace each other's differences, or would something darker undo the progress they had made? Samir's heart raced as the figure stepped closer. The fading sunlight caught glints of metal, perhaps a belt buckle or jewelry, and Samir squinted, trying to focus. The individual was clad in dark clothing, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors worn by the crowd. Zara noticed the shift in Samir's posture. She turned to look, her eyes wide. "Who is that?" "I don't know, but we need to find out," Samir replied, taking a step forward. Drawn to the mystery, the figure took another step, hesitating as if weighing the moment. Just beyond the boundary of noise and laughter, the crowd began to murmur, eyes darting between Samir, Zara, and the stranger. Tension thickened the air, the earlier warmth felt suddenly fragile. As if sensing their anticipation, the figure raised a hand, palm out. "I'm not here to cause trouble," they said. The voice was deep and steady, yet something in it felt worn, as though it carried the weight of history. Samir's instinct was to reject fear. "Then why are you here?" he called back, his voice rising above the crowd. "I have something to share, something about what brought me here," the stranger replied. They stepped into the light, revealing an angular face that spoke of pain but also resilience. "My name is Raj." The crowd collectively held its breath, unsure how to react. "Raj," Zara repeated, her voice softer now. "What do you know about us?" Raj scanned the crowd, his gaze locking onto people as if searching for connection. "What I know is that you're trying to find strength in your stories, to lift up each other where darkness has struck. I've lived it, I've felt that very same need." Samir felt a flicker of understanding ignite within him. "You're not alone," he replied gently. "We're all fighting our own battles, but together, we might find a way through." Raj's expression shifted, layers of walls coming down. "My loss was great, but I've learned the importance of community, of coming together. I was once so angry, consumed by it. But here, now, with all of you," his voice faltered as he glanced at the children laughing nearby, joy painting the community in shades of light. "I want to tell my story so that you remember how valuable these moments are. How the ties you forge can mend even the deepest wounds." Zara took a step closer, her uncertainty melting away. "There's power in sharing. We've all been marked by our pasts. What do you want to say, really?" Raj inhaled deeply, the breaths anchoring him. "There are so many lives affected by loss, lives that can't find a way to heal. But if we all share what we carry, we can create a ripple of hope." As Samir listened, a spark of inspiration emerged. What if we turned this gathering into something more permanent? A way to remember, to connect, to help others? Raj nodded thoughtfully, a flicker of a smile breaking through his solemn demeanor. "It starts by opening up, by having these conversations. The more we talk, the less alone we feel." "Yes," Zara chimed in, hope threading through her voice. "This could be a space where stories get shared and solidarity forms." With renewed energy, Samir turned to the crowd, feeling excitement bubble beneath the tense atmosphere. We can create a collective experience, a space for healing and laughter. Let us share not just tonight, but beyond this moment. But just as murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, Raj's face clouded with concern. But what will happen when we dive into our truths? Not all stories are easy. Some may bring anger, fear, nostalgia turning to grief. A chill swept through Samir, but there was no turning back now. Then we face it together. Each story is a thread, weaving us closer. Raj looked at Samir and Zara, the decision hanging like a gossamer thread, fragile yet indispensable. As the crowd took a breath, ready to move forward, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows. Within the darkness, they glimpsed hope, but the question hung in the air: would they truly be strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? The moment felt charged, alive with potential. What hidden truths would emerge and how would they shape their community? Samir felt the weight of the crowd's anticipation, the energy palpable in the crisp evening air. It was as if each person was holding their breath, ready to take a leap into the unknown. The darkness settled around them like an embrace, inviting yet intimidating. "Look, Raj," he started, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest, "if we're going to start this journey, we need to trust each other. Everyone here carries something. Why don't you share your story first?" Raj took a step back, visibly taken aback by the suggestion. The shadows danced across his face, revealing the struggle etched in his features. After a moment, he nodded, the flicker of resolve igniting again in his eyes. "Okay, but know that my story isn't easy to tell." He cleared his throat, and the people around them leaned in, the laughter and joy from before now replaced by a hushed reverence. "When I was younger, I lost my sister in a senseless act of violence," he began, emotion tightening his voice. "She was kindness personified, someone who would share anything with anyone. Losing her shattered me." The crowd felt the shift, each person resonating with the grief woven into Raja's words. Samir watched Zara's face deepen with empathy, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But Raj continued, taking a deep breath as he gathered strength. "Through my anger, I found a spark. I knew I had to change the narrative, to not let her memory fade into despair." "How did you do that?" a voice called out from the back of the group, breaking the brief silence that enveloped them. Raj smiled faintly, the shadows lifting slightly. "I started a local community initiative, focusing on sharing stories of those we've lost. It became a healing space, allowing us to grieve but also to celebrate life." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But I can't deny it was challenging. The darker stories needed light, and there were times I felt ready to give up." The crowd shifted. They were leaning in closer now, each word connecting them more tightly together, like a tapestry of shared experiences. Zach, a young man near the front, spoke up. "What did you do when you felt like giving up?" Those words hung in the air, inviting even more vulnerability. Raj looked down, collecting his thoughts before speaking again. "I reached out. I wrote my feelings down. I spoke to people who had also lost loved ones. There was beauty in knowing I wasn't alone." Samir felt a warmth swell in his chest as he watched the crowd process Raj's honesty. "See," he said to Zara, "this is the power of community. We learn from each other, we find strength, even in our darkest truths." But Raj wasn't finished. "Sometimes, I still stumble. Grief has no timeline. It's messy. But embracing it brought me here to you all. I want you to know it's okay to feel everything. Fear, anger, joy, it all has its place." Tears trickled down Zara's cheeks, and Samir felt a lump in his throat. They were here, together, on the precipice of something profound. And yet, a nagging thought whispered in the back of his mind: what would happen when they began sharing their own stories? Would the honesty be met with understanding, or would it splinter the fragile bond they were building? Suddenly, Raj's gaze sharpened as he looked beyond the crowd, his expression tense. I sense we're not alone in this journey, he stated softly, as shadows shifted in the corner of their gathering. Every eye followed Raj's line of sight, fear mingling with hope. What do you mean? Samir asked, a chill creeping into his bones. As the air thickened with uncertainty, one thing was clear, the shadows they faced were no longer just personal, there was something beyond that could change everything. Could they hold together against whatever could come next? The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating yet electrifying. Samir's heartbeat quickened, a drumming sound that matched the anxiety swelling within the crowd. They were no longer just sharing sorrows, they were on the brink of confronting an unknown threat together. Raj stepped closer to the gathered folks, his posture shifting from a storyteller to a guardian. We need to stay vigilant, he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. The faces around were illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby street lamp, eyes wide and anxious. Is it just my imagination? Whispered Zara, her voice trembling. Samir could see the slight quiver of her lips. He wanted to reach out, to hold her hand and draw strength from her warmth, but they all needed to focus, to be present. One brave soul from the back called out, maybe it's just the dark playing tricks on us. The words were meant to reassure, but they lacked conviction, floating away like dead leaves in a crisp autumn breeze. Raj shook his head slowly, still scanning the shadows. Sometimes, he said, scanning the edge of the crowd, what we fear is real. But we can face it together. The quiet urgency in his tone stirred something within Samir. It was that same feeling he had when they first gathered, the strange alchemy of shared burdens, a flicker of hope amid despair. The crowd shifted again, energy rippling like a silent wave. If we're not alone, a voice whispered, maybe whatever's out there can't disturb us. It was a tentative hope that drew a collective breath. Samir felt it too, the rising spirit lifting the dread for a moment. We've all shared pain, loss, and resilience, Samir spoke up, his voice growing stronger. Whatever this is, we've faced darker shadows in our own lives. Let us not forget what has brought us here. The group seemed to absorb his words, nodding slowly, but the tension still pressed against them. A chill swept through the air, causing a shiver to travel down Samir's spine. Just then, a rustle pierced the silence from the fringe of the shadows, a sound too distinct to ignore. What was that? Someone gasped, the fear of the unknown igniting a fresh wave of anxiety. Raj stepped forward. Stay close, everyone. If we do confront something, our strength is in our unity. The shadows grew bolder. Figures began to emerge, silhouettes that seemed almost human but oddly distorted, their features hidden in the darkness. Samir's breath caught in his throat as the figures moved closer, fear gripping him. What had they unwittingly summoned with their stories of honesty and healing? We won't let fear dictate our response. Stand together. Raj shouted, rallying the crowd. Samir felt a rush of adrenaline as he moved closer to Zara, instinctively interlacing their fingers. The figures halted a few yards away, their eyes glinting like distant lanterns. An unsettling silence befell the space as they stood frozen, weighty and unsure. Who are you? Raj called out, his voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty surrounding them. The figures shifted slightly, as though deliberating a response. And then a voice emerged, low and haunting, echoing through the crowd. We come not to harm, but to reveal. Samir's pulse quickened. This was the moment, the one that could shift everything. Would they finally confront the deeper truths that lay not only within, but beyond their collective journey? What secrets awaited them in that darkness? The air crackled with anticipation. Samir leaned into Zara, their fingers still tightly clasped, as if their union could shield them from whatever the shadows held. The voice had a texture smooth yet jagged, enveloping the crowd with an eerie, unwelcome embrace. Reveal what? Raj pressed, his brow furrowing as he sought the truth buried within that chilling tone. The figures shifted, their blurred outlines growing clearer under the dim light. Samir's heart raced as he tried to make sense of the expressions or lack thereof on their faces. They were both familiar and foreign, like ghosts of memories hovering just out of sight. One figure stepped forward, a tall shape wrapped in darkness. The voice that emerged was deeper, imbued with an ancient weight. "We are the echoes of the past." It paused, allowing a deep breath to fill the space between them, "and the unfinished stories that linger among you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Samir exchanged a worried glance with Zara. He could see the reflection of terror in her eyes. What were they really facing? The unknown bore a heavy toll, and they were all acutely aware of their vulnerabilities. But something strummed within him, a chord struck by curiosity and the need for answers. Raj took a step forward. "Unfinished stories? What do you mean?" The challenge in his voice invited the shadows to share their burden. "Every painful memory, every unspoken word," the figure gestured wide with a sweeping hand that seemed to pull the air itself towards it, "has forged those who stand before us. We have come to unearth those buried truths, truths that bind you." The crowd fell silent, processing the words that hung in the night air. Samir's mind whirled, connecting the dots. This wasn't just about confronting fears, it was about unearthing wounds that had festered long enough in silence. "What would you have us do?" Zara's voice broke through the spellbinding grip of the shadows. Her question hung low, yet it was a potent mix of hope and skepticism. "Share those stories. Let them surface," the figure urged, pointing to the rows of anxious faces. "Every person here carries a weight. You've all lost someone, something. For healing to be met, those shadows must be acknowledged." Fear and hesitation washed over Samir. Was he ready to expose his truths? The raw, aching parts of himself? He could feel Zara's tension radiating from her, her grip tightening again. It mirrored his own conflict, a battle between vulnerability and self-preservation. One voice broke the stillness, a woman interrupting with trembling words. "But what if it hurts? What if we can't handle it?" "Pain is part of the journey," the figure answered softly, almost tenderly. "To confront it is to reclaim your strength." Samir's thoughts raced. He remembered his own moments of raw honesty, how agony transformed when shared among trusted souls. He felt that same flickering flame of courage he'd seen when they first gathered. "Isn't it time we faced what we've been avoiding?" He called out, his heart pounding but his voice resolute. "Maybe those hidden pieces are what we need to rebuild ourselves." Murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd. Some nodded, others displayed uncertainty, but Samir sensed a collective stirring. The shadows leaned in closer, as if they understood this was their moment, a meeting of souls desperate for light. "So, who will start?" Raj's voice boomed, filling the heaviness with purpose. The air shifted, energy spiraled, and fear began to dissipate as they collectively leaned toward what was to come. As Samir scanned the crowd, he caught Zara's eyes, her uncertainties reflected back at him. He took a step forward, ready to push against the legacy of his own silence, and then, just as the first stories of their past began to tumble forth into the night, the ground beneath them trembled. A rumble echoed, shaking the very roots of their gathering. "What now?" Someone shouted, panic creeping in again. The shadows shuddered, and a new voice erupted from the darkness, echoing with a power that felt almost alive. "Beware. The truth is a double-edged sword." What awaited them as they dug deeper? Could the journey lead them to healing or further darkness? The rumble intensified, the ground vibrating like the heartbeat of some ancient creature awakening beneath them. Samir froze, uncertainty washing over him. A shared fear rippled through the crowd, and even the shadows seemed to flinch, as if caught off guard by this sudden upheaval. "What do we do?" Zara whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of safety in the chaos. "We face it," Samir said, determination lacing his words. The moment felt charged, and he could feel a spark igniting within him. "We awaken the truth." The figure in darkness flickered, caught between stillness and movement. "The truth holds power," it warned, the voice sharp like a dagger. "It is not just about your stories, it's about the truths that shape your paths." Raj stepped forward, his face set in a determined expression. We can't let fear dictate our actions. He looked around, scanning the anxious faces of the crowd. Let us acknowledge our past. It's the only way we can move forward. What about the trembling ground? What does it mean? Someone called from the back, panic rising like a tide. The tremors are a result of the truths you try to suppress, the figure replied. Every unacknowledged pain sets the world trembling. Every secret you hide sends ripples through the fabric of your lives. Only when confronted with honesty can the earth beneath you find its balance. The words resonated in the air, heavy with meaning. Samir's heart raced. He remembered the last time he let his truth slip, how liberating it had felt and yet how terrifying. Could they truly confront what they had kept locked away? I'll go first, a voice broke the tension. It was a man from a few rows back, his voice shaking yet resolute. I lost my brother years ago. I never forgave him for leaving without saying goodbye. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on him. He was struggling with addiction. We fought, and when he finally walked out, it was too late. I never got the chance to tell him I loved him. I've carried that guilt like a stone in my chest. As he spoke, the ground shook once more, but this time it felt different, less like a warning and more like a release. The crowd leaned in, the weight of his story hanging in the air, palpable yet healing. My mother's voice silenced, a woman chimed in, her own pain spilling out like an open wound. She fought against everything, but I never told her how proud I was of her, how brave she was. Encouraged, others began to step forward. Each story unleashed tremors of emotion, memories spilling forth like floodwaters. With every word shared, the crowd felt more connected, as if each revelation breathed life into the shadows that had once intimidated them. Zara turned to Samir, eyes wide with awe. It's like we're rewriting our past, she said, realization dawning on her. We're giving those lost stories a voice. Exactly. Samir replied, a smile breaking through his tension. Healing doesn't just happen in silence. It thrives when we face the truth together. Suddenly, the figure in the darkness grew brighter, the shadows swirling around it as if attracted to the warmth of their collective vulnerability. Your truth carries weight, it said, voice steady now. But be mindful, for some truths are more dangerous than they appear. The crowd murmured, uncertainty creeping back in as they wrestled with the idea of truths that could harm. What could be so dangerous? Someone shouted from the back, the fear palpable in their tone. The figure paused, its form twisting as new shadows melted around it. The truth about what lies beneath your surface, what you dare not speak. Just as it was about to reveal more, the tremors surged once again, this time accompanied by a faint whisper, rattling their confidence. Beware what you seek. As the air grew thick with tension, Samir felt a knot forming in his stomach. What other hidden truths were waiting to be exposed? Would they be ready for what lay beyond their stories? And with that question hanging heavily in the air, the shadows stirred, waiting for the next sacrifice to step into the light. Samir stood amidst the echoes of shared stories, feeling a powerful sense of connection rising around him. The crowd, once scattered with fear, began to pulse with an energy that felt almost alive. Each person's truth acted as a thread, weaving them closer, wrapping them in a blanket of solidarity. People's faces softened, tears glistening like stars as they poured out their pain and loss. Raj's story rippled through the crowd, igniting a spark of courage. I struggled with forgiving myself, he admitted, his voice cracking. Anger consumed me after the loss of my sister. But I realized that if I want her memory to live on, I have to create something beautiful from this pain. Samir watched. Each tale shared was met with compassion, their fear now melting away in the warmth of understanding. Zara stepped forward, her earlier reservations replaced with a fierce spirit. I never wanted to talk about my struggles with self-worth, she confessed, her voice trembling but strong. For years, I believed I was not enough, but standing here, I see that we're all linked by this journey of rediscovery. The air vibrated with acceptance. Collective breaths held their shared fragility, shared burdens becoming lighter as each word flowed between them. "Your courage is contagious," Samir said, his heart swelling with pride. "Every story you tell helps us reclaim our strength." Then the shadows shifted again, as if energized by their honesty. One figure at the edge took a step forward, its voice soft yet filled with resolve. "You speak of reclaiming strength, but be wary. The truth you unearth can bring liberation, yet it can also stir the darkness into rage." The warning wafted through the air like smoke, cautioning them against the unfamiliar terrain they were traversing. "But isn't freedom worth the risk?" Samir called back, undeterred. "Our pain will only oppress us unless we confront it." A gentle murmuring of agreement rippled across the crowd, encouraging others to step into the light and share. "I'm scared," a teenage girl confessed, her hands shivering in the evening glow. "Scared of what happens when we dig too deep." A deep silence fell over them, reverberating with shared anxiety. Samir empathized. He felt that fear choking him, the intense uncertainty of what engaging honestly could unveil. But even so, he sensed an undeniable pull toward hope, a voice in his heart urging him onward. Just as he was about to speak, an unforeseen tremor rocked the ground, louder and harsher than before, sending fear crashing through their gathering. Samir stumbled slightly, the darkness swirling again, the shadows recoiling with a simultaneous gasp. "What are we doing?" Raj yelled, tension rising. "Should we stop? Is this dangerous?" The figure in front steadied itself, its voice commanding yet calming. "You are awakening dormant truths. What lies underneath the surface is not to be silenced. However, this is a space you must collectively manage. When the chaos rises in response to your truths, it can unleash what you've suppressed. But we need to let these stories breathe." Zara exclaimed. "My fears have held me captive for too long." A murmur of uncertainty stirred among the crowd. Samir recognized the shifting dynamic and seized the moment. This was where they could forge something truly transformative. What if fear and courage coexist? He proposed boldly, urgency coloring his tone. "They do not have to be opposites. We can nurture both within ourselves." A hesitance lingered across the crowd, but something about his sincerity resounded. People began nodding, glimmers of hope igniting behind their eyes. "We are here together," Samir continued, determination infusing each syllable. "To listen to each other, yes, and to understand. Fear can linger, and that's okay. It's part of this journey." Then, unexpectedly, a young boy with wide, innocent eyes stepped forward, drawing all attention to him. "I think telling our fears makes them smaller," he said simply, his voice bright against the backdrop of tense uncertainty. "Like when we share our worries with friends, they don't feel so scary anymore." A ripple of smiles spread through the crowd, tension easing under the weight of his earnest wisdom. Samir felt a warmth swell inside him. Yes. That was the spark they needed, a reminder that vulnerability could lead to healing. Raj stepped beside the boy, his demeanor softened. "Exactly. Will you start us off, little one?" The boy beamed. "I'm scared of the dark. But when my mom leaves the light on, I know she loves me, and it's okay." As laughs erupted, Samir felt that warmth multiply. Every shared truth brought them closer together, defiantly rewiring the fabric of their community. This was the power of bravery, lifting each other through layers of fear and into the light, and suddenly, Samir's heart was full. People began to reveal old fears, burdens that had weighed heavily on their souls. The encroaching shadows began to retreat, overwhelmed by the light they were creating together. "We need to embrace all parts of ourselves," Samir shouted above the rising energy. "With honesty and love, we can build each other up." And in that moment, as laughter rang out and songs began to swell once more, they understood together they were stronger, more resilient. Here, illuminated by moonlight and hope, they had just begun to mend their community's fabric. Samir felt love stitch them together in the soothing embrace of unity. They could grow in empathy, allowing their stories to elevate each other. And among them was the echo of their shared humanity, beautifully flawed but deeply intertwined. As the crowd cheered, Samir joined hands with Zara, Raj, and the little boy, feeling their heartbeats synchronize. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a renewed journey to carry forward their shared stories and strength. "Let the world know," he declared, lifting his voice to encompass them all, "that we can overcome anything when we face our truths together." With that, beneath the canopy of stars, they began to sing, each note a celebration of healing, and each word a promise to never falter again in the face of darkness. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending, your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.